Caroline Dowd-Higgins. Thank you for listening to Your Working Life, my podcast series featuring thought leaders in the career and personal growth arena. You spend a significant portion of your life at work, so my goal is to provide you with tools, inspiration, and resources so you can enjoy your career and love your life. And I am delighted to welcome my very special guest, a friend and colleague, Susan Smith Blakely, to the show. Susan, welcome back.
Thank you, Caroline. I'm delighted to be back. We had a wonderful conversation before, and I hope that I got some interesting things to share with your listeners this time.
I have every confidence that you do, my dear. Let me tell them all about you. Susan Smith Blakely is a lawyer, an author, and a motivational speaker. She is a graduate of the University of Wisconsin with distinction and Georgetown University Law Center. After 25 years as a private practice attorney with additional experience in the public sector, she left law practice in 2006 to found Legal Perspectives, LLC, the umbrella company for her writing, speaking, and coaching on topics related to women lawyers. And as a practicing lawyer, a public sector chief of staff, and more recently a business entrepreneur, Susan understands the challenges of both law and business, especially for women. And I have so enjoyed her extraordinary book series, Best Friends at the Bar, What Women Need to Know About a Career in the Law. Best Friends at the Bar, The New Balance for Today's Woman Lawyer, and the most recent addition to that extraordinary group, Best Friends at the Bar, Top-Down Leadership for Women Lawyers. So Susan, the trilogy is complete. Let's go back a little bit. Tell us about your background in law and how you found yourself in law school and thriving in the legal profession.
Oh, well, that started at a very early age, Caroline. My father was a lawyer. He was a lawyer in a small town in Wisconsin, and you certainly get to understand the law when you see it in that small a setting. I saw him make a huge difference in his community, not just on behalf of his clients, but on behalf of organizations and as a civic leader to really make things happen that other people didn't have the background to make happen. And I wanted that to be my story as well. So I graduated from Georgetown Law School, as you said, and then I started in the practice of law. In 1979, those were the days when the women's liberation movement was alive and well, and we were all believing that we could not only have it all, but the sky was the limit, and we were crashing through the glass ceilings and hearing it crack as we whacked away at it. And we had been in law school, of course, with men. My particular law school had 33% of women lawyers, but that was very unusual because it was in Washington, D.C., and that's the lawyers' town. But we competed very, very well against them in law school, and so when we came out, we had every reason to believe that we could do the same. And we did as we started in practice. I started with a mid-sized national law firm as the first woman litigation lawyer, and I specialized in construction contract law and trial work. And at that time, I was one of the only women in the country doing it. I had my own hard hat with my name on it.
Wow.
And it was pretty exciting things. I worked on things like huge infrastructure projects, dams, subway tunnels, highways. And it all went very well for those of us that were doing it at the time until there was a defining moment. And that defining moment is when we had our first children. And we then found out that we weren't just like the rest of the guys in the law school or the law firm, because we had other responsibilities that counted a lot for us. So it was a very a challenging time for us. A lot of women dropped out. A lot of women lawyers dropped out of the workplace in those days. And I chose not to. I stayed in. I raised two children I'm married to another litigator, so that puts an extra strain on things because he was most often globetrotting and not available for anything. And also the children are just it's very time intensive. But I did stay in. I had to make a lot of adjustments in my career. When I went part-time, I had to give up my partnership, which was, a pretty devastating experience because I fought very hard for it. But I knew that something had to give on the home front, so I went part-time. Then I went, as you mentioned, into public service to get a little more flexibility. I finally came back from that to my last law firm where I was a partner, and I retired as a partner in 2006. So that was a lot of experience that spoke to me very loudly throughout my career as I watched so many women struggle with not only the work-life issues, but also the gender issues that were very much alive and well then and still are to some extent, but they certainly were challenging back then. And watching these women drop out and seeing all of that talent sort of squandered it was kind of painful to me. And so when I retired from practice, I decided I was going to try to do something about that. The retention rates and the advancement rates for women in the law are miserable. And they were then, and 10 years into the project, they haven't improved a lot. But programs like mine are raising the awareness and getting people to talk about these issues more, and we're also seeing more problem solving. So I'm very pleased with that.
Susan, let's talk about the program, Best Friends at the Bar. So when you created this entity, and it's so multi-tiered, you're speaking publicly, you're giving workshops and keynotes and presentations in firms and conferences and beyond, and clearly the book trilogy. What's the goal when you set out, and has it changed?
Well, the goal is to raise that awareness and also to find good and lasting solutions for these issues that face women. I mean, the statistics are that these young women come out of law school at the top of their classes,
right,
in terms of GPAs and honors. And then we find that when they go to what we call big law, which are the largest law firms in the world, and most of them are headquartered here in the United States, we find that 76% of them drop out by year 5. Now, you can say, oh, they've made a lot of money by that time, and they've paid off their student loans or made a good crack in them. But the point is that they're also leaving for other reasons. You can just do the math. When they've been there 5 years, they're at the cusp of either starting their families or they have started their families. So my goal is really to raise the awareness, to stem that tide of 40% of women leaving our career mid-career. Now, some of those statistics have gotten a little better in the last years, but that's only because we've been in a recession.
Yeah.
And in a recession, people don't give up jobs. But, my argument to these young women is you really can't afford to give up this excellent job you have. Excellent in terms of prestige and professional placement and all of the future that holds for you, because you do have these student loans that are just the magnitude of them today is shocking. I have 2 children and they are both lawyers. One graduates this spring. One's been in practice for 4 years. And it's discouraging to them. So they have these student loans, they've got to be paid off. Then when they have families, they've got children that have to be educated. It takes 2 incomes to buy a starter house in this country. And as a result, giving up jobs that pay well and have a good future for you is not a good idea. So I am trying to talk to them in any way that I can about these work-life issues and about the gender issues. We still have tremendous challenges in our profession in terms of gender. We've got laws against intentional discrimination these days. But there is something called unconscious bias
Yes.
that is affecting all women in the workplace today, and certainly affecting women in the legal workplace because ours is still a male-dominated profession. And unconscious bias is exactly that. I do not hold these men, I don't blame them as I might, because I know that they don't understand that some of what they do has such a negative impact on women, and it has a much different impact on women than it does on men. So I discuss a lot of those things in my third book, because the subject of that book is effective leadership for women lawyers. And I have to start by explaining what values women bring to the workplace that are different than the values that males bring to the workplace. Then I have to tell the law firms why they should care, and that is a combination of a number of factors that affect their bottom line. And losing talented women is not. That is becoming a problem for them in the perception of their clients and in succession plans, and just plain losing that degree of talent. And then I go into the factors for effective leadership. The factors that I think you and I, Carolyn, both learned from Marshall Goldsmith when we trained in his leadership program several years ago. And at the end of that program, when he put us through all the certification requirements for career counseling and developing, I spoke with Marshall, who, if your readers don't know about Marshall Goldsmith, they should. All they need to do is Google him. He's the guru on leadership and career development. And I told him, I said, I would love to apply these leadership concepts and negative behavior traits and what you do about them to the context of the law firm, which is something that has not been done before. And that's what I do. And I think it's pretty interesting, and the people that are reading it think so too.
So, Susan, let me ask, it's clear that you are helping the employers, the leaders at the law firm level and the corporate entities understand the power of women in the workforce. Is it changing? Are they starting to see that they have to adjust perhaps expectations at work? And by that I don't mean quality of work, but perhaps entertain job share or more flexible schedules. And I'm seeing this in other career sectors in addition to law. So I guess my question is, are you moving the needle?
Well, I think that we are moving the needle. I'm not moving it all by myself. I'm doing yeoman's work, but there are a lot of people out there that are too, and a lot of them are good friends of mine, and I respect their work tremendously. Yes, I think we are moving the needle. I think we have brought the law firms to the awareness that they really need to look at flexibility and in terms of work proportion, whether you're going to work part-time, full-time, whatever, that looking at the flexible work day, looking at some kinds of sharing arrangements. But, they come to that conclusion not so much out of the goodness of their hearts. They come to that conclusion when they recognize that if they don't do that, they're going to lose talent. And they're going to lose talent that is going to become and that fact is going to become very aware of their clients.
Yes.
Law firms are only as good as how many clients walk through the door.
Absolutely.
And so as their clients, and particularly some of their larger clients, you take publicly traded companies, for instance, that have a responsibility to shareholders, they want to see diversity because their shareholders are demanding diversity within their management, and they want to see that same diversity in their law firms. Many of the in-house counsel for these large companies are women that were practicing in law firms, and they simply could not handle all of that responsibility and the home front as well, and then face the gender issues. And they went off and went in-house. And those women are looking very carefully at who is doing their work in law firms, and they are promoting the women there. So this becomes a very important issue for law firms to look at. And as I said before, the cost of attrition for a law firm for an experienced, even a senior associate in a law firm, can be upwards to $500,000 to replace one departing person at that level. That's
remarkable,
significant
right?
Hit, and that's something they have to think about. And then they have to think about what happens when you take out the middle section of your talent base. What happens to your succession plan?
Exactly.
So those are the kinds of things. I mean, they have to. I certainly understand that I am only going to get the attention of law firms if I talk to them as a business person.
Mm-hmm.
This is how what is happening affects your bottom line. And they also understand, if they read the studies, and I certainly read them to them if they don't read them, is that it has been demonstrated that if you don't have enough women on a management committee, in leadership roles, you are not as effective as a group, because you need that diversity, not just the women, but other diverse groups.
Yes.
To sit around a table and bring different experiences, different perspectives and attitudes to bear on problems to find solutions. And we know that from management studies in the best business schools in the country. So these are all the kinds of reasons that I hopefully am getting some attention to these issues.
So, Susan, let's dive into the newest book, Best Friends at the Bar, Top-Down Leadership for Women Lawyers. What are the takeaways? Why should one read this book?
Well, there are a lot of reasons you should read the book. For the leaders, they need to read the book because there are very, very significant negative behaviors that leaders bring to the workplace. You know, leadership is not, you don't get born with that skill. Leadership is something that you have to work on. And there are very, very negative behavior traits. And I can certainly go through some of them for you if you wish, that leaders exhibit on a daily basis, and they don't even understand it. They don't know that they're doing it, but they're shutting down conversations. They're shutting down the kinds of participatory experience that is so important to women. Women come into the workplace with a different set of values. They are interested in sharing and equality and teamwork and interpersonal relationships. They want to know they're making a contribution. They're doing important work. They're having their work acknowledged and appreciated. Most men, and these are all stereotypes, but I have to indulge in them. Most men that come into the workplace in law firms are interested in money, power, more power, and that's a very, very different set of values. So I'm trying to educate the leadership to say, take a look at how you are leading everyone, because some of your behavior also affects the men negatively, but it particularly affects the women. And so that's a big takeaway from the book. First of all, educating the law firms on why they should care about losing women, and that the retention and advancement rates are so low. Also, and I'm not looking for a handout for women, Carolyn. I need to make that very clear to your listeners. I'm not suggesting that women should get anything that is beyond what their contribution is. Pay equity is pay equity. If you work full-time, you get paid full-time. If you work part-time, you get paid part-time. Now, I don't like the fact that women make 78 cents on the dollar to men, but I'm not asking for any free handout for women. But I'm asking for awareness, and I'm asking for them to superimpose that awareness over their business plan, and to understand that this value that women represent just shouldn't be squandered. The second thing that I do is I try to also make them understand how to have better conversations with women about these issues. And to do that, I have to educate them on what the issues are for these young women. So this is really sort of a letter to law firm leaders saying, here's why you should care, here's what you can do about it, and by the way, here's how you can talk to these young women and help them in their career development instead of discouraging them.
So, Susan, what's the advice that you might have for that fifth-year associate who's approaching the potential partner track, right? Usually at 7 years, up or out, depending upon the law firm, who is struggling and saying, maybe it is time to start a family, or should I wait? Who's having those critical questions of, should I stay or should I go? And I realize that's a huge question, but if you can distill it down to a bit of brief advice, what would you say to her?
Well, I emphasize what I call personal definitions of success because it's different for every person.
True.
And it depends upon your personal circumstances. Everybody's personal circumstances are different. So the first thing I would say to her is if there's anybody else in your life that this decision impacts, you better sit down and talk about it. You better talk about what becoming a partner in the law firm is going to mean to you, what your increased responsibilities will be, how you might handle that, if you want to handle it. Are your values such that you want to work part-time, or are your values such that you want to be on a continuously upwardly mobile path to partnership? I don't advocate one over the other. I don't make any value judgments in the work that I do. That's up to the individual person. But it takes a lot of planning. It takes a lot of consideration. The thing I don't like to see is I don't want to see young women leave the workforce like deer in headlights because they're blindsided.
Right.
They don't know what to expect. If they read my books, they will know what to expect. Now, I can tell you, I didn't stay on in a continued upward path because of the things I explained before. But I stayed in, which has always been what I consider to be my greatest accomplishment in my career. It wasn't becoming a partner in a law firm. It was staying in. It was very challenging, but I love being a lawyer. And if you like the work you do, then you've got to somehow fashion something going forward. So you think about it, you put together what you think might be a proposal. If you're thinking of something less than just staying on that partnership track, you do your best advocacy possible. You absolutely have to advocate for yourself. You have to know how to recognize your talents, recognize the value that you have to the organization, and then you have to go in and you have to negotiate terms that are going to be acceptable for you. And once you find those terms, and once you've got somebody to agree to it, let's say it's less than full time, then you're going to have to understand that you're going to have to dignify that. You have to own it. You have to be proud of what you're doing. You have to dignify it because if you're not, nobody else will.
Exactly.
And then you see how long you want to stay on that particular path. But always, I'm doing a program at the Federal Bar Association in April on negotiating because we as women do not do it well for ourselves. We can negotiate so effectively for other people, but we don't know how to herald our own talents and contributions as well as we should. So put together that argument, you put together statistics on it, you make sure that management knows what you have done before and recognizes your contribution, but it's a personal decision. But the time to start thinking about those decisions is before you bill your first hour in a law firm or any place in your legal career. It starts at the very beginning and you start thinking about what do I want to happen in my personal life? What does my mate want to happen? How are we going to do this? Then you're not surprised.
Exactly. You're in control. Susan, what a joy to have you on. Love the new book, Best Friends at the Bar, Top-Down Leadership for Women Lawyers. How do we buy the book, and how do we reach out to you to book you for a speaking engagement? Or
Well, you can go to my website at www.bestfriendsatthebar.com, where you're going to get a lot of information, and you're going to read my weekly blogs that are there. I blog twice weekly on substantive matters. You can link to me from that website on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @smithblakely. Then you can go to Best Friends at the Bar on Facebook. You can contact me directly on email, susansmithblakely@gmail.com. You can see my YouTube videos on the website as well, and that's Susan Smith Blakely as well. And you can also link to LinkedIn, which is Susan Smith Blakely. So there are a lot of different ways that you can contact me. You can read all about the books on the website. And again, please pay attention to those blogs. The blogs also show up on Facebook, and they show up on Twitter, and they show up on LinkedIn, and they also show up on Miss JD, where I'm a contributing writer.
You are a dynamo. I'm so grateful for your time and wisdom today, and all the great work that you're doing on behalf of the legal profession at large, and certainly for women lawyers. Susan, thank you.
Thank you very much, Caroline. It's been a real pleasure.
And I want to thank all of you for tuning in to Your Working Life, where my goal is to help you design your career destiny so it doesn't happen by default. Career and life satisfaction is possible, and it's time to embrace what you love doing so you can do more of it. My show is now available on iTunes, YouTube, Podbean, and Stitcher. Leave a comment, as I always appreciate hearing from my listeners. I'm Caroline Dowd-Higgins. Take good care.